The wind howled through the skeletal trees, carrying the scent of smoke and decay. Snow crunched underfoot as Lieutenant Henry Caldwell led his platoon through the ruined countryside, their breath visible in the freezing air. The war had turned these once thriving villages into desolate wastelands, and now they marched into the unknown, their orders clear: disable the enemy's supply line at all costs. The night was unnervingly silent, save for the distant thunder of artillery. Henry pulled his coat tighter around him, scanning the moonlit landscape for movement. They had already lost 2 men to snipers. Every step forward felt like tempting fate. "Lieutenant, movement up ahead," whispered Sergeant Tom Hayes, his voice barely audible over the wind. Henry raised his fist, signaling a halt. He crouched behind the ruins of a farmhouse, peering through the scope of his rifle. Shadows flickered in the distance, enemy patrols, moving in pairs, scanning the area. "We go around," Henry decided. "Stay low, stay quiet." The men moved carefully, weaving through the debris of a fallen world. The tension in the air was suffocating. Henry could feel it pressing against his chest, the weight of responsibility growing heavier with each passing hour. A sudden gunshot shattered the silence. "Ambush!" someone shouted, but the enemy was already upon them. Bullets tore through the cold night, kicking up snow and dirt. Henry dove behind cover, his heart hammering in his chest. He returned fire, dropping a soldier who had broken from the trees. His men fought desperately, their breath coming in ragged gasps. The enemy had the advantage, but Henry refused to let fear consume him. "Hold your ground," he shouted, rallying his men. The battle raged for what felt like an eternity. One by one, the enemy fell, but at a cost. Corporal Mason lay motionless, his blood staining the snow. Private Dawson clutched his arm, trying to stifle the bleeding. When the last shot was fired, Henry exhaled shakily. They had survived, but barely. "We can't stay here," Hayes murmured, his face grim. "Reinforcements will come." Henry nodded. "We keep moving. We have to complete the mission." Dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gray. The platoon trudged forward, their energy waning. Their target, a railway bridge vital to the enemy supply chain, was only miles away. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley where the bridge stood, heavily guarded. Henry studied the defenses, his mind racing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted. "We need a distraction," he murmured. Hayes hesitated. "We don't have the manpower to fight head-on." Henry's jaw tightened. "Then we use what we have." A plan formed. A small team, led by Hayes, would draw the guards away with explosives, while Henry and the others would plant charges beneath the bridge. It was risky, but there was no other choice. As darkness fell, they moved into position. The first explosion rocked the valley, and shouts erupted as soldiers scrambled toward the commotion. Henry and his team sprinted toward the bridge, planting the charges with practiced precision. Then gunfire. The distraction team was engaged in a firefight. Henry's hands trembled as he set the detonator. "Fall back," he yelled, his men retreating as the ground quaked beneath them. A deafening explosion split the air. The bridge crumbled, taking the enemy's supply route with it. Henry watched as the structure collapsed into the icy river below, victory tinged with exhaustion. They had succeeded. But as Henry counted his remaining men, he realized the cost had been far too great. The war was not over. Not for them. And as they disappeared into the winter night, Henry knew that the shadows of the battlefield would haunt them forever.